My name is Jessica Dunker. I am so excited tonight to be here, and this is why Ruth Harbor started in my dining room. You'll probably hear all of the things that were happening to us and say, duh, of course that was God. How did they miss that part? But just like the characters in the Bible, I take great comfort in all of the times that they didn't figure out what was going on either, because they didn't know what the next verse was going to say, and they didn't know what the next chapter was going to read. And when I'm reading a Bible story, I know where it ends. It ends with Jesus, and that's all a good thing. We didn't really know where this story was going to end either. So this is what happened. I had a 0 birthday. I'm not going to ask how many people in the room have had a 0 birthday, because I'm looking around and I know many people have had a 0 birthday. My 0 birthday was 30, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was, but it was 30. And I was in a great place in my life. I had these 3 beautiful children, and they were healthy and well, and it was good. And I had this fantastic husband who's still fantastic. And I lived in a home that I never thought I would get to have. And I had a job that was amazing for a woman my age. In fact, when I was on maternity leave for my twins, they promoted me. I came back to a better job. And yet, there was something missing. And it was a big thing, and I didn't know how to name it. Becky and Carrie and I have the great blessing of getting to sing together, and we for years sang in a music group at Lutheran Church of Hope. And we loved the music of Point of Grace, a women's group. And so the first part of the story is a trip to a concert at First Federated Church when Point of Grace was there, and I'll bet some of you were there too. And that night, Nancy Elkhorn, a woman who had no idea that she would play a part in this story, got up and talked about Mercy Ministries in Nashville, Tennessee. And she stood up in the middle of the concert and said, "It is not enough to go out and protest. If we're going to do something, we got to do something positive. We've got to provide a place for pregnant women who have nowhere to go to stay." And that really struck me. As I sat in First Federated Church and listened to a concert, I thought, that woman's really got it. I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to help her. Yep, that's what I'm being called into doing. That's where I'm going to go. God's calling me to go help her. So I went and I gathered up her literature, and then I went home and I was all excited. And then one of my baby twins cried, and then my 4-year-old at the time needed a sandwich, and probably somebody had a fever. So I stuck all the information in the drawer and I shut the drawer. But you know what? God didn't want that information in the drawer. But he really had to pry me along to pop it out.
Her presentation wasn't all that earth-shattering, and it was short, but she had mentioned in the presentation that if you made a $20 donation, you could have a copy of her book called Echoes of Mercy. And I'm always up for a good read, so I decided I would make the donation. Seemed like a worthy cause, and I got a copy of the book. And took it home and really didn't think that much about it on the way home, but as soon as I got home, I really started having these feelings of that's something I could do. And I thought, gosh, that's really strange that I would have those thoughts, that would come to me. That just seemed pretty pompous, to be honest, to think that I could do something like that. And I kind of dismissed it, but then I started reading the book and found myself up until 3 o'clock in the morning finishing the book. I just absolutely couldn't put it down. I had tears running down my face, just really felt that after reading that book, this was something that potentially God was placing on my heart to do. To be honest, ever since that night, there was a pain in my heart, just a pain that I couldn't describe, something that almost felt physical. Like I nearly considered going to the doctor, because it wasn't a depression, but it was certainly something that I felt needed to be answered. I would not let myself believe that it was a true calling from God. I had heard of callings from God. I had heard of other people's experiences, but again, I was 22 years old. I was newly married, just had started my career. And it wasn't something that I had in my plan, and I wasn't willing to accept it. So I really tried to dismiss it. Probably within the next week, my husband and I went to, at the time my mom was living in Nebraska, we went to visit her there. And I remember during her church service, they talked specifically about God calling people to do things that they never expected to do. And I thought, oh, what a coincidence, that they would talk about that this Sunday. And I found myself again crying in church. And I'm so, not a crier. And I just couldn't understand what was going on. And I still had that pain that I couldn't quite describe, maybe a slight depression even. And so on the way home, I was in tears the whole way home. It's a 5-hour drive. And my husband, God bless him, he sat there and I could feel him kind of looking over at me every once in a while thinking, what now? What's the problem? What have I done? And finally he pulled the car over and said, what is wrong? What do we need to talk about? And so I told him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I think God is calling me to do some kind of mission work. And I said, I'm not exactly sure what it is. And the only thing that he said to me was, as long as we don't have to move to Africa, I'm fine with whatever God calls you to do. And I thought, okay, he's a keeper, first of all. And from then on, I started slowly, very slowly, letting myself accept that maybe this was for real. Maybe this was something God wanted me to do, but I had no idea how to start, how to, even begin. And it was certainly something I didn't want to talk to anybody about because I wasn't ready, and I thought for sure someone would tell me I was crazy. We had a class that I was taking at church, and in the class that night, it was Wednesday night class, it was Pastor John at the time was talking about finding your shalom. And your shalom was basically what would give you inner peace, what would help you release any struggle that you had in your life. And instantly I knew it was to accept this calling that God had on my life that I was afraid of. I was truly afraid. And the idea was you were going to write down your shalom on a piece of paper and give it to the person next to you. And you were going to pray for each other. The person sitting next to me, I didn't know her, so I thought, okay, this is pretty safe. I can write down to start a home like Mercy Ministries. And so I did that, and I wrote it down on my card. And as I'm sitting there with my card, one of my very good friends, she walked into the class. She's always late, and that's just her, and we love her anyway.
So I went for the first friendly face, trying to sneak in and look invisible. And the problem was when I walked in at the time, everybody's writing. I'm like, oh, what are they writing? I hate that. So I get a card, and the pastor's not going to tell me what everybody's writing because he figures I'm late and I can figure it out. So I go for my friendly face, Becky Zemlicka. And I sit down next to her and say, hey, Becky, what are we doing? She said, oh, we're writing our shalom. What's a shalom?
I said, it's what would ever give you inner peace. And then we're going to pray for each other, and we're going to pass these cards to one another and pray for one another. And so we sat there for a while, and I'm waiting for her to write her shalom, hoping that she'll pass it to the person on the other side of her. And she leans over and she said, what'd you write? And I literally looked at her and I said, Jessica, get your own shalom.
And here Becky, one of my good friends, said to me, I'm not going to show you. Not going to show me? Well, I thought you're going to exchange your card with that person you don't even know, and they're going to pray for you. You're not going to show me? Give me your card. No. So I'm quicker of hand. Grab the card. And this was a moment. This is how God talks to people today. He uses index cards. Becky's card says, I need to start a home for unwed mothers, just like Mercy Ministries. Well, hello.
You gotta love her. She grabbed my card out of my hand and wanted to see what I had written. She thought I was just being silly and foolish. And she read it and just sat back in her chair. And I looked at her and I said, Jessica, I'm not ready for anybody to tell me that I'm crazy, because this is the first time I've never said it out loud. This is the first time I've ever written it down on paper, so I just don't want to hear it. And she said, no, I need to talk to you. I said, we're kind of in the middle of class here. And she's like, seriously, I need to talk to you. And she literally pulled me out of class. And we were in the front row. So we walk out of class, and I said, what? And she said, I have had this same feeling. I have felt that God has been calling me to start something like Mercy Ministries. And, initially I thought, seriously, she's stealing my shalom. And I realized soon after that, it was a lot more than that. She said that, she had gotten the book too. She had given the donation, had gotten the Echoes of Mercy book, and it literally kept showing up on her countertop. That she would put it in a drawer, and it would end up on her countertop. And she was trying to find out from her family, who keeps pulling this out of these drawers? And, it was clearly God trying to forcibly place that call on her, because she, like me, was a very business-minded, very, very much a thinker, and it didn't resonate in your brain. It had to resonate in your heart. We both said, okay, maybe we're not crazy here. Maybe there is something to this. But we felt that we needed a little more foundation. We're both marketing people, and we thought, we could, figure out how to get this going. And we thought, let's make sure we're not crazy before we start something like this. And so at that time, Lutheran Church of Hope was a pretty small, very new church. And we thought, we'll go to like the most mature spiritual person that we know, possibly one of the oldest people in the church, and she was like late 30s at that time. So we thought, we got to go talk to Carrie. We got to go see, because Carrie will tell us that we're crazy, or she'll tell us to do it, one or the other. She just had a lot of intuition that way and had a really good relationship with Christ. So we trusted that. So we went and found Carrie and said, Carrie, this is what God is doing, we believe, and this is what's happened. What do you think?
Before that, God had prepared my heart. I believe in any kind of birth, there's some type of preparation, and God was preparing my heart. I had a burden for young women, for women who might find themselves having a difficult time. My profession is that I'm a dietitian, and my expertise is that I was working with eating disorders. And I found that God was moving in big ways on the eating disorder unit that I served, and in the patients, the clientele that I served. And He was just moving my heart to have a passion, even more so, to help women who might find themselves in trouble. I kept reading like the newspaper. I would pray over the newspaper in the morning when I was having breakfast, and I kept seeing articles about young women and leaving babies at doorsteps, and having children be in garbage cans. And that just broke my heart. And we went to the concert, the Point of Grace concert, where Nancy Elkhorn spoke, and my heart was moved even more. And it was like, Lord, what do you want me to do exactly with women? And that evening, when Becky came in and Jessica came in, I just lost it. I just started to cry. I had like a sinking feeling in my stomach at first, and then I just started to cry, and the peace of the Holy Spirit just washed over me. And from that point on, it was something that God had brought together, and it was His.
So we went to find Carrie. Carrie, card, concert, book, drawer. Ah! What do you think? And Carrie, and the way, if many of you do know Carrie actually, Carrie, smile, listen, but says nothing. We're like, are we crazy? Are we crazy? Tears, no. She said, because here's what you don't understand. Here's what you don't know. I have known that God is calling me to start a home for women. And I have been praying for leaders. And last night I had a dream that I was in that home. It was a Victorian home, and I was surrounded by friends, and I was chipping away at the ceiling, and the ceiling fell away, and there was a stained glass window. She said, God just delivered the two of you to me. Okay, freaky moment here, okay? I mean, stay with me, people. All right, this is not an easy place for a 22-year-old woman, a 30-year-old gal with babies everywhere, at home. We're all working. None of us had ever had an unplanned pregnancy. None of us had ever worked in a nonprofit organization. In fact, none of us had been on a board. let's just go build ourselves a home for unwed mothers. Why not? Okay. So we decided to visit the rocket scientist, and that would be my husband, Ty. And he is always logical, and we knew that he would stop us. So, Wednesday night, we zoom into my driveway. We get out of the house. There's Ty, he's in the kitchen. 3 women. First of all, 3 women, which we live with at our house with $3. Woo! You know, a drawer and cards and windows and dreams and Ty, nah. We're just waiting, right? Oh, come on, tell us we're crazy. And this is what he said.
And I was just waiting for those words of, you've lost your mind, go back to work. And instead, Ty said, you know, there are a lot of callings in life, but when God calls, that's not something that you want to ignore. And I thought, oh, you know, honestly, I thought, great. I can't find anybody to tell me that I'm crazy, so I guess I'm supposed to do this. And that was the first time that I truly, that night, went home and in my heart accepted and knew what I was supposed to do. I didn't know how we were supposed to do it, but I knew that we were supposed to do it. And I was thankful that God had provided other people to go along with me and that I wasn't doing it on my own.
And that's when we knew. It was September 25th, 1996, and that's how Ruth Harbor got started. But once we said yes, once we said, okay, God, not sure how we're going to do it, show us, oh boy, we hung on for the ride. And things started to happen around us, both personally and related to this ministry, that even looking back, even as I'm going to tell you about them, it's hard to believe they're true. We'll just start with the name. We said, oh, what do we want the name to say? Compassion, safe place, you know. And we're like, oh, let's, you know, go off and we're going to all come back with name ideas and we'll talk about it. And then we'll choose one. And so we were all doing that, and I happened to be sitting on a picturesque day. It was a beautiful day, sitting by my fireplace, thinking of names, and I was like, Compassion Cottage, and kitschy, icky names. And all of a sudden, it was like someone whispered in my ear, Ruth. I was like, ew, Ruth, no. But I liked the idea of a woman's name, like Sarah. And then it was like somebody hit me in the head. Ruth. I'm like, okay, Ruth. So I got a dictionary. Looked up the word Ruth. Well, what do you know? Ruth means compassion. And then I was afraid because the dictionary was talking to me, so I dropped it and ran out of the room. And so then I thought, House of Ruth. No, I think that was sung at my wedding, so I'm thinking no on that. And so I looked up harbor. And harbor means safety, shelter, and retreat. And so don't ever call and ask to speak to Ruth Harbor, because Ruth Harbor encompasses all that we wanted this ministry to be. It's a compassionate place of safety, shelter, and retreat. So being that we were all about marketing at the time because we didn't know what else we were supposed to be doing, we decided to have a logo. And we went to see Bill Butler, who's actually here tonight. And Bill, in true artist form, we said, Bill, we have a speaking engagement lined up at our church. We're so excited. Can we have a logo so we can print stuff in 2 weeks? And he was like, no, can't possibly do that because I have to think and feel. And, he's good at it. So we were like, okay, we'll figure something else out. But the next day, literally, the next day, Bill brings us our logo.
I have a logo for you. And he said it was the most unique experience I've ever had in designing a logo. This is truly a gift that God has placed on my heart. After hearing your story, I envisioned this logo, and it had so much meaning. The Ruth Harbor logo, actually, if you look at the words Ruth Harbor, the H in the center has a cross at the top. And it's in the center of an oval shape, a broken oval shape, which is really to signify the womb of a woman, and the womb is broken, and there's the Christ-centered hope with the H in the center of the womb. So, it is a wonderful communication of exactly what Ruth Harbor is supposed to be, that Christ-centered hope in the womb. And then Bill had picked the color purple, and that's because it's, he said, the closest color to God and the rainbow. And it's just one of those things where you just knew that was it. That was perfect.
And he said, oh, you're not going to believe this. It just came to me. I was watching TV on this. Oh, we're like, oh, no, anything you tell us that just comes to you, we're all about that. We get it, Bill. We're there. Okay. So then we thought, well, we sing, so we should have a song. Because, we didn't know what we were doing, right? So we thought we'd have a name, a logo, and a song, and people would give us money to start a home for unwed mothers. And so we started looking for a song. And a friend of mine at Lessing, I know this is going to sound weird. I was like, oh, bring it to me. She said, there's this great song called Safe Harbor. Sandy Patty sings it. Have you ever heard it? No. But you know what? Tonight you're going to hear it, and you're going to know why we chose it as our song. Because it was a great song. God gave it to us. So, at this point, we're like, oh, boy, what next? When you have a nonprofit organization, you need something called bylaws and articles of incorporation. I have a really funny friend who called me up in the midst of all this. Her name is Beth Coronelli. She said, you will never guess what I did. I'm like, oh, I can't even imagine what you did this time. I just talked myself into the MBA program at the University of Iowa. I said, really? I didn't even think you took that test, that M test. Oh, no, didn't take that. I was like, you literally walked in and talked yourself into the program? Yep. I said, didn't classes already start? Yeah, I'm starting late. She said, yeah, here's my problem and why I'm calling you. Because I started late and, I didn't do the things I was exactly supposed to get in, I'm in a class in the law school. Oh, I said, interesting. It's a nonprofit class, and I need to find a nonprofit organization that needs articles of incorporation and bylaws written. So I know you do all that church stuff, so do you know any groups or something that I might be able to help? Yeah, I do. No one. So, within a month, our articles of incorporation and bylaws were delivered to us via the University of Iowa Law School.
One of the things that had happened early on with answered prayer was Jessica had spoken at Lutheran Church of Hope, our home church. That was the first talking about what Ruth Harbor was and what had happened. And during that time, that service, God just said, Carrie, there's going to be some seed money that comes. And I told Jessica before she left that day that there would be a gift of seed money, that's what I felt that God was laying on my heart.
So we spoke and told this story and really focusing on how does God call people and what does God call us to do. And about an hour after the last church service, got a phone call. Ring, ring, hello. Hello, are you Jessica Dunker? I am. Saw you speak today at Lutheran Church of Hope. Oh, are you a member? No, not a member. Remember that? Not a member, just was there. Really liked what you had to say today about having a home for unwed mothers, loving, compassionate solution. Really liked that. Would like to give you a seed donation and wondered if you'd filed your 501c3 paperwork. Well, yeah, courtesy of the University of Iowa Law School. Matter of fact, we have. And anything that you give to us will be retroactive to that date. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure of that because I'd like to donate $100,000. Yeah, that's a 1 with 5 zeros, okay? I'm thinking like $1,000. I would have been really happy, not kidding. And you know what that gift did? It made us legitimate.
When we were searching for a home, Becky and Jessica would say, oh, I think it might be here, I think it might be there. And for me, I was trained to be in prayer about that the whole time. Lord, please show us where you want this. There was one Sunday afternoon, the three of us were out looking, and we were specifically going to go to a home. In looking at that location, we drove by the house where Ruth Harbor is now. And God just laid on my heart, this is where I want my house.
Well, we found a building. I didn't like it. But the realtor insisted that we go to it. In fact, none of us really liked it because it was an icky place. It was an oral surgeon's office. And there was a room that was made out of lead because they took x-rays there, and that just didn't seem like an okay thing for pregnant ladies. We got to walking around in it, and we're like, you know what? This place could really work But man, it's got to get gutted. I mean, we got to take this thing to the beams. And that's when other people started walking into our lives.
Just because we had that first impression of the home, Becky's real voice came in. How are we going to get this done? And God provided many volunteers, from contractors to electricians to people with just the skill of a sledgehammer to knock out walls, people who would come and paint, people who would shingle. All of those needs that house needed to be Ruth Harbor were met by people coming to volunteer. We even had a tree that needed to be removed, and Becky did an interview on the radio, and someone had heard her, and they came, and that same day, and they took the tree down. So God provided so many needs that we had in getting the house that we needed he needed for Ruth Harbor, and that it needed to be decorated. He brought decorators. He brought people who made donations for furniture.
And all of a sudden, interior designers started showing up. And then, because I was answering the phone at this point, because when calls were coming, it was usually a good thing. Ring, ring. And tell me if you would trust this call. I represent a group of people who keep their money offshore because we don't like the government telling us how to use it, but we would sure like to give you a grant. I will meet you in a secure place. But you know, I met them, and under the condition that we did not talk about who they were, they gave us $250,000. Said, hey, go. You found that property? We like that property. Build yourself a home for unwed mothers. We need somebody to run the thing. And so we had the blessing of hiring our first director, Terry Hout, who came to us from Prison Ministries. And Terry was really instrumental in helping us get Ruth Harbor off the ground.